bringing the people behind our food to life.
So there's a level of education involved in what it is that the Farm to School program is about that goes well beyond what they eat on their plate at lunch.
Yeah, that's very true. And one of the most successful ways to help introduce kids to these new products is through taste testings. And there are a number of schools that will, for example, when melons come into season, they'll line up the plates of different melons, and then kids get to taste those and see what they taste like. Or the same thing with tomatoes, or even with beets, or some very different products like that. I was speaking with a woman in North Carolina, Emily Jackson, and she is a teacher by training and has come into farm to school work, and she takes kids out into the garden and they pick things and they eat it out of the garden. And she had children eating raw okra, and students going home and saying, "Mom, please make okra for me. I've learned how to cook it 3 ways, and I really want to eat okra." Same thing with Swiss chard in New York, and kale in Burlington, Vermont. There's a gentleman there who is trained by the Culinary Institute of America. They have kids that visit a very nearby farm, and they help plant product. They pick it when it's harvested in the spring, and then they process it so that they've got it not only in the summer but through the school year. So they've got zucchinis and kale and broccoli and strawberries that these kids have been involved in actually preparing, that they then eat the rest of the year. And I have to say that it's really in these Northeast and Midwest states where we see a lot of the innovation happening with the processing of product. Less so in California, or where it's a year-round growing situation, but where people really have to think about what they're going to serve the rest of the year, we do see these efforts at preserving, which I think is really wonderful.
And what important lessons that learn. I mean, you give kids you got to give kids a lot more credit than maybe we have in the past.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because those little pallets go well beyond chicken nuggets, don't they?
Yes, they do. And much of it has to do with exposure to the product. It has to do with some peer pressure, with some good encouragement from teachers and from wonderful food service staff that will help kids try new products. So there is certainly a whole learning environment that goes with farm to school, and learning about and testing and tasting and finding out what you don't like. Certainly there are things that kids don't like that we don't like as adults, but it really is all about tasting that and finding out what it is that you really do want to eat that's healthy for you.
So where do people start?
Well, what I like to recommend to people is to sit down and talk to the food service director and find out from that food service director, what are the facilities that they have, what kinds of foods are they serving, do they use fresh product, do they have staff that can help them do some of that food preparation, is their staff trained in doing these kinds of things, and kind of get the lay of the land for food service. And in many cases, food service is run as its own entity. It's run as a for-profit operation. It doesn't receive funding from the school. And not only does it not receive funding, but it actually pays the school indirect costs. So it may very well be paying the school for its heating costs, its water, for rent, for all these kinds of things. And so in starting with food service and finding out what kinds of resources they are, you can also find out what it is they'd really like. Because many people would like to be doing different things with their meals, but they're very overworked. They have a very big job to do, and to do that, in addition to try and do things like get funding for additional equipment, or maybe try and change the policy so they're not paying quite so much to the school administration, it's hard for them to do on their own. And if people can come in and help support them in those kinds of ways, then they can make changes that that work with food service. And clearly, other routes to go if that doesn't really work very well, if there isn't that reception from food service, certainly going to the school board and bringing up the idea of can we feed our kids a healthier lunch, and can we maybe help our economy at the same time? And talking to school board members about that would be another way to approach it. a larger meeting where people that are very key to this kind of approach coming together to talk about it, where you've got farmers in the room, you've got food service staff in the room, teachers, principal, the school nurse, folks that can really help make this happen and move it forward, coming together in a room to figure out, well, what would those steps be and what would it look like, is also a great way to go. I mean, a group approach where, you know, people are pooling their resources. And I have to say that probably close to 3/4 of the requests that I receive on starting a farm to school program come from nonprofit organizations. They come from folks that are really interested in trying to make a difference in their community. And harnessing that power, that energy, that resource, in some cases that funding from the nonprofit organization, can be very helpful in the startup costs of putting a program together. You know, just the labor of figuring out what's available locally, what's on the menu, and how do you make those changes, it takes some labor to do that. And if you've got some interested folks that are willing to do that, they can really help put a program in place.
But you really do see a rising tide of people interested in this, from kids to school administrators to community leaders, that this is something that could be really beneficial for the entire food economy.
Definitely. We see interest from all of those parties, and it's putting folks together and kind of, you know, finding that synergy where great minds working together can really make something happen.